Genetic research shows that modern Jews are not Jewish at all. They originate from the historical region of Khazaria, in Central Eurasia, now known as Ukraine. In 2014, a Western-backed coup in Ukraine erupted. There are no coincidences. The Western-backed war in Ukraine was intended to clear ethnic Russians out of the Donbass and Crimea regions. On March 16, 2014, The Times of Israel published an article titled, "Leaked Report, Israel Acknowledges Jews, in fact Khazars, Secret Plan for Reverse Migration to Ukraine." Just 4 weeks before this explosive publication, on February 18, 2014, the official and democratic government of Ukraine was ousted. A Jewish-supported interim government was appointed. Both of these occurrences can be connected to the massive construction of a new world capital in Kazakhstan. The Times of Israel piece is important because, for the first time, there is a semi-official pronouncement of the Khazaria heritage of Eastern European Jews who migrated to the land of Palestine and established the nation of Israel. This idea was first promoted by the Hungarian historian Arthur Koestler in his 1976 book titled The 13th Tribe. Koestler suffered heavy criticism and his book was the target of a massive propaganda campaign meant to discredit his work. The fact that an official Jewish publication is now discussing a secret report promoting the same conclusion should not go unnoticed by the large contingent of online scholars and historians. The Khazars were a Mongol, Tatar people that converted to Judaism en masse, during a tumultuous time in Eastern European history. Surrounded on both sides by the warring religions, Christianity and Islam, in the 11th century, the Russian Empire conquered Khazaria, and destroyed any possibility of a larger establishment of a Khazarian Jewish homeland in Eastern Europe. Centuries later, the Khazaria remnants gained a level of revenge by orchestrating the Bolshevik Revolution and murdering the Russian monarch family the Romanovs. After Lenin's death and with the rise of Stalin, the Soviet Union once again came under control of the Khazars. This lasted until the fall of the Berlin Wall and the complete collapse of the USSR. Ironically, the nation of Israel established diplomatic ties with the former Soviet Union member state of Kazakhstan in 1991, along with others, such as Georgia. The relationship between Israel and Kazakhstan has grown at a steady pace and includes coordination along political, trade, economic, defense, and intelligence lines. The capital city Astana, located in the far northeast of the country, has undergone a construction boom, with key monuments having a strongly Masonic character. The city has since been renamed to Nur Sultan. Since the rise of Vladimir Putin in Russia, and the arrest and expulsion of Jewish-aligned oligarchs, there has been an exodus of ethnic Russians from Kazakhstan back to the motherland. This migration has included Russian doctors, teachers, scientists, and other prominent members of society. As such, Israel has been providing Kazakhstan with an increase in Jewish expertise in those same areas as relations tighten even further. In addition, 25% of Israel's oil comes from Kazakhstan. This is set to grow substantially in the coming years as Israel finds itself further isolated diplomatically, and will be forced to give up the West Bank and possibly the Gaza Strip in order to appease international pressure. Settlers from these areas have already begun to migrate into Kazakhstan, but not at the anticipated pace of migration into eastern Ukraine. As strained relations between Russia and Kazakhstan increase, and military bases on both sides of the border are hardened, the battle for control of eastern Ukraine quietly continued without much coverage in the Jewish-owned, Western media. This war is meant to remove the ethnic and Russian-speaking majority from the east of the country, a region which made up a large section of the Khazar Empire 1,000 years before. When the map of ancient Khazar is superimposed over a modern map of Eastern Europe, we can clearly see the importance of Ukraine and Crimea, as well as other areas of past tension and war, such as Georgia. Considering the inevitability of a Palestinian state, the need to resettle the settlers in the West Bank and Gaza Strip to Ukraine is becoming an all-important issue. This migration was originally intended to load Crimea with Jewish migrants, but the Russian move to annex Crimea through official diplomatic means had caused a readjustment of Jewish strategies. The pressure built along Russia's borders from NATO, and Jewish Western financiers, such as George Soros, is intent on establishing a new Khazaria which will be larger than the original, and will incorporate the nation of Kazakhstan. The remnants of the old Khazaria are working towards this objective from within the nations of Israel, Ukraine, Georgia, and Kazakhstan. Since the 2020 election, the word Nazi has been bandied about, almost so as to reduce the veracity of the word. Currently both sides of the war are accusing each other of being Nazis. The truth is, neo-Nazis funded by Jews are serving a purpose to destabilize Ukraine in the Donbass region. This way, Jews can avoid the international scrutiny they have experienced in Palestine. They do not care who destabilizes the region, so long as they are not perceived to be massacring Palestinians and Ukrainians at the same time. From the Jewish perspective, this has been a success from the point of propaganda. The world media has liberal-leaning Westerners believing that Russians are to blame for everything, and any dispute of the fact is a Nazi perspective. Interestingly, Western liberals of the intellectual variety are becoming more and more constrained by their allegiances because, for posterity under truth, one cannot support the liberation of Palestine, and support the liberation of Ukraine at the same time. Because, this would be like cheering for, and against the same baseball team. It's not only hypocritical, it's retarded. Unfortunately, few mainstream liberals understand what the fuck is going on. Is it so difficult to comprehend that the people behind the ongoing genocide of Palestinians can also be capable of massacring Ukrainians in the Donbass? The method of stealing Palestinian land by virtue of Israeli state-sponsored genocide is a well-known fact, and yet, Western liberals are somehow incapable of comprehending that this cannot possibly happen in Ukraine, when Ukraine is the main interest of Israeli pursuit. Ukraine is their ancestral land, and where their genealogy originates from. It is not unlikely for any rational thinker to surmise that Ukraine is the main interest of ethnic Jews, because in all reality, Palestine has already been conquered. Now, Russians pose more of a threat to Israeli expansion into Ukraine than anybody else. Liberals freely accept that the genocide of Palestinians is a reality, and no form of media intervention can change their minds. Unfortunately, the same media that failed to persuade Western liberals about Israeli policy, has fooled them into believing that Ukraine is being invaded, when in fact, it is being liberated from Israel. Russian control of the region is Israel's worst nightmare, because Russia has a long-standing track record of peace compared to the West. For it is the West that has been responsible for the deaths of over 20 million people since World War II. The US military, and NATO has led a war-for-profit agenda for over a century. The presidency of Donald Trump has proved that a shift in focus to the decimation of assets related to human trafficking was a threat to Israel. Because Ukraine was the central hub of human trafficking, government money laundering, and now, as has been recently revealed, a hub of bioweapons manufacturing. For decades, while American allies bombed the world, Jewish media has consistently published hit pieces on Vladimir Putin. Political atheist intellectuals that do not subscribe to banner-waving politics have foretold that this method of layered media indoctrination would one day serve the purpose of vilifying the Russian people. And in 2022, when Putin made his move to liberate Ukraine from Israeli expansion into Eurasia, the programming of Westerners went off like a time bomb. The Ukrainian flag was adopted as a symbol of peace and unity by well-meaning people across the Western world. The horrifying irony is that the very same liberals that protest Israeli policy in Palestine are unwittingly in support of the same expansionist Israeli policy in Ukraine. This is why Jews openly call Americans goy or sheep. Because they don't possess basic critical thinking skills. They only seem to follow the narrative that suits their posterity, while not understanding that they have been fooled again. Liberals know very well that Ukrainian President Zelensky is Jewish, but they can't for the life of them understand that the same genocidal policies of Israel in Palestine have been in effect in Ukraine since 2014. Liberals are the most sensitive to tradition, and are always aggressive to support the transformation of society, but the people that they so voraciously protest are not the people that have enslaved them. As mentioned prior, the Jewish-owned media have Western liberals cheering for, and against, the same team, while having them believe they are fighting Nazis. Every time the word Nazi or white nationalist is uttered by a social justice warrior is another vote for the Israeli genocidal expansion into Palestine, Ukraine, and Kazakhstan. Explosive right-wing journalists like Lara Logan have expressed that Nazis have been operating in Ukraine since World War II, but right-wing journalists, similar to the left, are funded by Israeli interests. The media has not been forthcoming about who seeks to occupy the region once it has been decimated. For it is not Nazis who are in control. It is of Israeli interest to migrate their people into Eurasia by means of destabilization. Israeli expansion into Ukraine has been prevalent since 2014, but instead of being subject to similar criticism like they have experienced in Palestine, they have taken over Ukraine by proxy. The media, infiltrators of the MAGA movement, and Antifa, only seek to confuse and enrage people by repeating the word Nazi, while people are being murdered to make way for the Israeli migration to Ukraine. Similar to the Palestinian people, it is important to remember the Ukrainians that have died for no reason other than Israel's policy of expansion. Westerners don't enjoy investigating deep into historical events because if they did, they would learn, the same groups that provided America with slave labor, are the same lineage of people that control Western civilization. Many North Americans have been conformed into believing that social equality in the workplace is more important than who actually owned and operated the slave trade. Most don't realize that 80% of slave plantations, 90% of slave auctions and 100% of the slave ships were Jewish-owned. So while Western liberals think they are fighting racism, by welcoming mass migration, and reforming equality in the workplace, they are being laughed at, for blindly supporting hypocrisy. In Israel, there are prison walls to keep out Palestinians and it is official Israeli policy to block the immigration of Africans and Muslims. Westerners are being laughed at hysterically, because they are obsessed with how people make them feel, instead of taking control of their own feelings. They are more concerned for standing for the latest thing, instead of standing for truth. An open question was made on Telegram by the auspicious White Hat channel called Dongald Trunk class, in June of 2022. The open question asked, what is the true nature of the conflict in Ukraine? Here are some of the responses.
The Khazarian mafia that currently runs the Ukraine government wants to stay in control and keep Ukrainian people enslaved so they can continue human/child trafficking, weapons running and drug trafficking in order to make billions of dollars so they can continue their satanic Nazi elite lifestyle in order to progress the NWO in their dream of taking over the entire world. P.S. They also want to keep Biden family secrets.
Interesting, see how the word Nazi comes up again while discussing the Khazarian mafia. Are you starting to see how Khazarians have hijacked the word Nazi to keep all sides of the political debate confused and distracted? Is it really the Nazis, or is it the Khazarians?
It's exposing the bioweapons labs. And it also exposes those swamp politicians who have invested in energy for their own enrichment. Pelosi, Kerry, Biden, and Romney, they all use their kids to further their agenda and wealth. At we the people's expense. They use wars and conflicts as a way to drain energy. If those same politicians have property there, you know that they're doing other shady stuff.
With any luck, it's the final cleanup of the cabal. The rescue of every man, woman and child that is suffering against their will, uncovering of any all financial ties to everyone involved in nefarious activities there, or any place else on earth. The installation of fair and honest leadership that will lead to a safe and free country.
I think it's the denazification and destruction of the puppet state of Ukraine, which has been used as a front stronghold of the deep state, by the US, UK and others, for money laundering, child trafficking, storage of illicitly gained assets. It's the front line of evil, while the DS power brokers sit comfortably in their fiefdoms.
There again, the word Nazi, when referring to the Khazarian mafia. Are we learning anything?
Ukraine was previously known as Khazaria and is tied to the Khazarian mafia. NWO/NATO/UN etc. The US, McCain/Graham treason, played a role in a military coup about 8.5 years ago in which they removed the duly elected government and replaced it with neo-Nazi regime. Ukraine is one of the biggest traffickers of children, run by Biden, producers of adrenochrome, biological weapons of destruction and money laundering used by the cabal through Iran and Israel, in addition to being rich in minerals. Denazification of Ukraine, final spiritual battlehead of the snake is being destroyed. God wins.
When referring to the Khazarian mafia. There again, the word Nazi.
Everything mentioned above. Dumbs are getting cleared out and thousands of children being rescued. Biden had a 200-acre property there with mutilated children. Oh bummer, along with the rest of the filth of the world helped set this up.
Interesting?
Save the children, destroy international deep state stronghold, Ukraine government, eliminate global money laundering, expose US and NATO evil, search and destroy neo-Nazis, stage for main event, biblically pivotable.
The Nazi neo-Nazis again, LOL.
It is a money and weapons drain for NATO. NATO keeps sending it. Russia keeps seizing or destroying it. It is disarming NATO countries, and exposing their governments and MSM lies to the people at the same time. It is a big red pill conflict.
Is it the discovery of an ancient space ark in Ukraine?
Dumbs are more extensive than believed. It is the hub of evil for the cabal. But, we win.
We are waking up the whole world.
Child sex trafficking.
Ukraine conflict for the locals/Russia is finally booting the Nazi/Black Sun corruption out, forever. Yet it seems our world's big global news will be the revelation of the past/current global mafia players and exposure of their massive main hub there, thinking that our sleepy Americans are in for a big surprise when they learn that a key enemy has been the US. Well, our fraudulent elected mafia leaders and dirty military-industrial complex. When their actions are finally truthfully detailed, it will cinch a lot of mass corruption together: trafficking, banking, politics, elections, bioweapons/pharma, religion/cabal, CIA etc.
There you have it, a sex trafficking, pedophilia, adrenochrome, bioweapons, money laundering cesspool for the elites to plunder. Fortunately there are people in this world that know what the fuck they are doing, and this is coming to an end. What say you? This has been a production of Meme Trunk Media. Visit memetrunk.com for more remarkable news such as this, published by Truth Seekers Daily. Ask and you shall receive. Seek and you shall find. Knock, and the door shall be opened unto you.